The known world had vanished behind them. The last silhouettes of the Canary Islands slowly dissolved into the horizon until they were swallowed by the morning haze. And just like that, the men aboard the Santa Maria witnessed something terrifying and unforgettable for the first time in their lives. There was nothing but water in every direction, no coastline, no mountains, no villages, no familiar world. Only the endless blue of the Atlantic, a place that, for medieval Europe, existed somewhere between reality and myth. The moment the islands disappeared, a deep silence fell over the ship. Not the gentle silence of dawn, nor the peaceful quiet of a calm harbor. This was a heavy, suffocating silence, the sound of fear slowly taking shape. One sailor later recalled, when the land vanished, the sea seemed to rise higher. For many men, this was the first true moment of panic. Seeing only water, horizon to horizon, made the ocean feel like a living thing, infinite, watchful, waiting. For Columbus, it was progress. For the crew, it was a warning. Now fully committed to the deep ocean, the ship's routine had to change. The officers tightened discipline, more frequent night watches, stricter rationing of water, careful inspections of ropes and masts, daily recording of speed and direction, more meetings between Columbus, Pinzon, and Juan de la Cosa. Every detail mattered, because a single mistake at this point could mean death. The wind was steady, the sea calm, almost a calm, and the ocean's stillness made the men think more than they wanted to. Superstitions began to grow quickly. Some men believed that if they sailed too far, the ocean would boil. Others feared giant sea monsters waiting below the surface. Some whispered that the sun itself would burn them if they passed a certain invisible line. A young cabin boy asked an older sailor, "Does the sea have an end?" The sailor answered without looking up, "It has." But no one who found it ever returned. The boy didn't ask again. Columbus understood something crucial. Danger would not destroy the voyage, fear would. So he made two strategic decisions. First, he lied about the distances traveled, recording smaller numbers for the crew and larger ones in his private log. This kept the men from believing they were drifting too far from Europe. Second, he projected absolute confidence. Even when doubts gnawed at him, he never allowed his voice to tremble or his orders to sound uncertain. In his diary he wrote, "The best compass against fear is firmness, of course." The crew needed someone who looked unbreakable, and Columbus made sure he was that person. As the fleet progressed westward, the sea itself began to shift. The water turned deeper blue, almost purple under certain sunlight. The winds became more predictable, the easterly trade winds that would carry them swiftly west. To Columbus, it was a blessing. To the sailors, it felt unnatural. A wind that never changed direction, that pushed them only forward. Some believed it was the ocean itself dragging them away from home. The seeds of paranoia were planted. A few days later, the ship entered a dreaded phenomenon. A windless calm. No breeze, no movement. Just the oppressive weight of heat pressing down on the deck. The sails hung uselessly. The ship barely moved. The sun roasted the men, and arguments began over the smallest things. Columbus noted in his diary, "The sea appears dead. The men grow restless." Some sailors believed they had crossed into a cursed part of the ocean, a place where the sea slept and dragged sailors into eternal stillness. After several windless days, suspicions toward Columbus began to grow. One sailor muttered, "He's leading us into the abyss. If there is an abyss, then we'll face it together." Pinzon's leadership held the crew together far more than Columbus's authority ever could. Day after day, the scenery did not change. No birds, no floating plants, no sign of land. Just an endless, suffocating expanse of water. One sailor wrote years later, "If the world were made entirely of water, it would look exactly like what we saw then." Time seemed to stretch. Men forgot what day it was. Some had trouble sleeping, others experienced strange dreams. The crossing was no longer a physical challenge, it was psychological warfare. Then, suddenly, the ocean offered signs of life. Strange birds appeared in the sky, plant fragments floated beside the hull, wooden pieces drifted past the ship. The crew erupted in excitement. Land. There must be land nearby. Columbus capitalized on the moment. "Stay firm. What we seek is ahead." Even if uncertain, hope was enough. But beneath the hopeful murmurs, a hard truth settled in the hearts of the officers. They had already passed the point of no return. They carried too little water and food to turn back safely. From this moment forward, the only possible direction was forward into the vast unknown. The sailors didn't know it, but the officers did. The Santa Maria pushed onward. The wind filled her sails. The horizon remained empty. The leap into darkness had begun, and the hardest part was still waiting for them. The deeper the Santa Maria advanced into the Atlantic, the more the ocean seemed to test the men on board. Every day pushed them further from the world they knew and closer to a world they couldn't imagine. The journey was no longer just distance. It was mind, spirit, fear, and tension tightening with every new sunrise. Night at sea was different now. Without the faint glow of islands or coasts, the darkness felt absolute, a black dome stretching from wave to wave. The lookout in the crow's nest often described the sensation as staring into the lungs of the ocean. waves struck the hull with a different tone, deeper and hollow, as if something massive moved beneath them. Some men refused to approach the railings at night. They swore the sea called to them when they stared at it for too long. Superstition or fear, it made little difference. In the middle of the Atlantic, every shadow carried weight. During those long nights, one man never seemed to rest. Juan de la Cosa, master of the Santa Maria letters before dawn. He was already on deck, checking the tension of each rope, the angle of the sails, the stability of the sails, the stability of the tiller, the seams of the hull, the distribution of weight in the hold to the men. He felt like the embodiment of the ship itself, calm, silent, relentless. Columbus commanded the dream, but de la Cosa commanded the reality. One sailor later wrote, "Columbus led the route. De la Cosa kept us alive. If storms terrified sailors, stillness nearly broke them. The dead calm returned, an ocean without wind, without movement, without movement. The sun burned the deck until the tar softened. Sweat evaporated before it touched the wood. In the suffocating heat, tempers flared. Men fought over small things, a bucket, a place to sit, a rumor. One fight nearly turned fatal when two sailors accused each other of inviting bad luck by whistling on deck. Columbus observed from afar, his expression tight. He knew that fear, not weather, was the true storm forming aboard the Santa Maria. Small divisions grew sharper. There were now clear groups aboard: the faithful, who believed Columbus would find land; the cautious, who trusted Pinzon far more than their admiral; the fearful, who saw omens in every wave; the angry, who whispered about turning back; and the silent, whose thoughts no one could read. Pinzon walked the deck constantly, speaking to the men, easing tensions, promising rewards. His presence was a shield protecting the voyage from crumbling too early. Then came a moment recorded in nearly every historical account of the expedition. The compass shifted. The needle pointed slightly away from true north, just a few degrees, but enough. Sailors panicked. The sky is deceiving us. The sea is bending the world. We're sailing where no compass works. Columbus, aware of the danger, responded with a lie that saved the expedition. The stars move at night, so the compass only seems to change. It was false, but calming, and calm was survival. One evening, just after sunset, a low, unearthly moan echoed from beneath the ship. It vibrated through the hull, long, deep, almost mournful. The deck froze. Someone whispered, "The sea is speaking." Another cried out, claiming it was the call of a monster from sailors. Legends, a creature said to wake when ships ventured too far into forbidden waters. Modern science suggests it was probably underwater seismic activity or a large marine animal. But to the men of 1492, it was an omen, a warning, a message. No one slept well that night. Columbus continued writing his journal with methodical calm. He documented the winds, the course, the distance, the crew's behavior, the weather, yet he kept 2 logs, one for himself, with real distances, and another for the crew, with distances deliberately reduced. He recorded, "All goes well." But then, in the private margin, he added, "Some unrest. We are farther than they know." Columbus was not only navigating the ocean, he was navigating the minds of men. As tension reached a breaking point, the ocean delivered hope. Birds appeared, not many, but enough. Small land plants floated near the hull. A branch drifted past the boat. The men erupted in celebration. Land must be close. This is a sign. We will see shore soon. Even Columbus smiled, though he was cautious. What the crew didn't know, what only Columbus, Pinzon, and de la Cosa understood, was that they had passed the point of no return. They no longer had water or supplies to sail back safely. The only direction left was forward. Columbus wrote in the margin of his journal, "If fear grows now, all is lost." And so the Santa Maria continued westward. The wind carried the ship steadily. The sky remained clear. But the minds of the crew grew darker with each passing day. They were farther from Europe than any living man had ever been. Farther than their fathers, their grandfathers, their ancestors had ever imagined going. They were not explorers anymore. They were hostages of the horizon. The crossing had begun, and the Atlantic had not yet shown its true face.